Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of Mario's Minute. In case you do not know, this is a podcast I do here monthly in two different forms. First of all, I do it on my YouTube channel, Mr. Mario 2011, in a video form, of course, but there's not all too much going on visually. There's just my channel art there, and then a cool-looking visualizer. At least I think it's a cool-looking one. And then there's also the actual podcast audio-only format, so you can take this around and listen to it wherever the hell you want to, like an actual podcast. Simply look up Mario's Minute in your favorite podcasting app, provider, or platform, and you should hopefully be able to find it. It's not available on all places, but it's available on most of them. But this is my second podcast, my main one being Mod Chat, where I talk more about modding, new developments, just things that I find cool that are new, coming out, being developed and such in the world of console modding. That's much more structured. This series, however, or I guess podcast, I come on here and I just talk about whatever the hell I want to. Sometimes I have a guest on, sometimes I don't, and we just cycle out between month to month. So last month I did have a guest on who was Badger Goodger, and that was a super fun episode, much longer as well too. And it's funny because typically when I do have guests on, I kind of have a little bit of an outline of topics that I can refer to, and sometimes we do refer to that, but there's episodes where, it's almost useless typing it up because we don't refer to it at all, and it was one of those episodes last month, so it was a fun one. But this time around, we are coming in solo, and there's a few things that I wanted to talk about, so we can just hop right into it. First of all, the first thing being that I finally got sick. I ended up getting COVID. Thankfully, I've recovered and everything, and I'm not worried about it. I really wasn't worried about it even to begin with there, when I saw how it was kind of impacting me. But I did kind of want to talk about that, share my experience and everything. So I have been able to bypass it successfully for over 2 years at this point. Just like everyone else, in March of 2020, I was sent home. But there was, I have a day job as well too, and there were times where, personally myself, I have been vaccinated. I did get the first booster at the time, and I remember, like, last summer, for example, I was admittedly pretty unsafe, like just going around to a whole bunch of places with a whole bunch of different people, really not masking up or anything, and I seemed to be fine. And the only time that I've gotten sick, aside from this, in the last 2 years, was actually back in March. I did end up getting a cold, and I had some symptoms and such, and I got it from my brother, and I know he got it from his school friends or some friends that he saw a movie with or something, but he got sick. After a few days, I ended up getting sick. I was testing him, I was testing myself. We were both coming up negative every time, so it was kind of one of those things where, oh yeah, we forgot that the common cold is a thing. And after a few days, I was perfectly fine. So what ended up happening was I got sick. When was this? It had to be, I'm just looking at my calendar here. It ended up being, I guess, at the end of May. Yeah, I remember because it was right after I had that episode with Badger Goodger. That's where I ended up getting sick. And I know how I got sick as well, too. I ended up going to a concert, and this is actually, timeline is, I went to the concert. A few days later, I did that episode with Badger Goodger, and quite literally the day after we recorded, that's when I started feeling sick. So it was a Thursday that I went to a concert, and I don't think I felt anything until, I think I felt a little bit of something on Saturday evening, but it mostly hit me Sunday, and by a little bit of something, I meant like I had kind of something in my throat. My throat just didn't feel comfortable, felt like slightly scratchy or something. But on Sunday, that's when it ended up hitting me a bit more. And it was weird because it was like every few hours, it was kind of changing. It was like, it felt like there was something going on in my head. And then a few hours later, it was like in my chest. And then a few hours later, it was in my legs. And it was like, it was kind of just whatever it was going all over my body. It was definitely strange, and one of those things where I can kind of attest to this when there's people who do say, oh yeah, like I got sick with COVID, and at first I thought it was a cold, and it's like, no, this feels different. That's exactly how it was to me. Now, thankfully, my case was pretty mild, but again, just kind of sharing my experience here. What ended up happening on Sunday was, the best way I can describe it is it felt like I had a cold, but I was overreacting to the cold, and I couldn't stop myself from overreacting. Like, it was at the point where, I felt kind of a scratchy throat, a little bit stuffy, but then I had some other symptoms too, like I was kind of feeling nauseous throughout the day. And I'm like, this is weird, okay. And then that night, my girlfriend and I were hanging out, and I'm talking to her, and I noticed, I was putting some stuff up on my shelf, and I'm just like, I was getting winded. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, this, I also felt kind of fatigued, tired. I felt just weaker overall. And I was like, this is just a cold. Like, it's fine. I had a cold earlier this year. I'll just kick its butt in a few days. But this was just strange to me because, again, I was putting stuff up on a shelf. And, like, when I was bending down and coming back up, I was getting winded from that action. And I've never had something like that before. So that was definitely strange. The nausea, as I said, that was kind of an odd feeling as well too. But then the other things were, it just felt like, again, overall, like I was just, I was weak. But it's like, I think she even thought I was exaggerating a bit. And I'm like, no, this is how it's feeling. This is what's going on right now. And then also the odd thing, which I shared this when I was talking about it publicly as well too. I also noticed there was something different when, just kind of out of nowhere, I started farting as well too, and it smelled like death. Like, I'll tell you that. But what I did was, that evening I ended up testing, and I still tested negative. I was doing at-home tests. Then I went to sleep. I had to just go to sleep early because I was like, I'm tired and I'm just super fatigued for whatever reason, but it's fine. I have a cold. But I didn't really sleep very well that night. I kept waking up every few hours. I think I woke up super early in the morning, and I knew there was something wrong. I knew there was something different when I woke up and I was starving. Like, it's not that I was hungry. It's not that I kind of wanted to just eat something. Like, I was starving. On top of that, my back just ended up hurting a good amount. And my legs, it felt like my legs were just, it felt like I was up running all night. And then I just, crashed into bed like 20 minutes before. So that's when I said, okay, there's something seriously wrong. And one of my best friends, he said something years ago, and granted, his was different. He ended up breaking his finger, and when he went to, I don't remember where he went. He had to go to a hospital, but I think they ended up mixing up his x-ray, and they said that his finger was fine, but it ended up being broken. And the point being is he said his finger was okay. Well, the doctor said it, and he went home, and he ended up coming back after like a week or so, because he just said, what was it? He was talking about his symptoms, and he said something along the lines of, there's something seriously wrong when you are starving, but you're throwing up, and you need to shit all at the same time. Like, when you're having all that at once, like, that does not make sense. So he's like, yeah, no, there is something wrong here. You need to look at this again. And then he went to a different place. They looked at it, and it was, oh yeah, your finger is broken. Yeah, it's been broken for the past week. So what happened was, once I felt that, I woke up, went downstairs, grabbed one of my tests, tested, and I got a super faint second line. Like, the first line shows the test is working, but the second line, if it shows up, that means you're positive. And it was super faint, but it was just faint enough where I was like, pretty much if anything shows up there, that means you have COVID. So I'm like, damn it, okay, you know what, I finally got it. And it was funny because I, told friends, I told some family about it. And at first my family they were doubting it like a little bit. Like, it's not like they didn't believe me, but they were just like, oh, well, that line is super faint. And are you sure? I'm like, Yeah, you're not with me right now. You don't know how I feel. Like, yeah, I believe this. I definitely have it. So what I ended up doing was I just followed CDC regulations, which was for 5 days you have to completely self-isolate, and then for 5 days after that you can interact with people but at a distance, stay masked up, and all of that. And by the way, actually, even for about probably quarter 3 to even still now, I started masking up more often and everything. So I actually got more serious about my masking, but I even did that at the concert. But it's one of those things, you're in an enclosed venue for like 3 or 4 hours, and if you're like the 1% of people who is masked up there, it's there's still a chance that you're gonna get it. So that's what happened to me. It was funny because even again, I was talking with family and they were like, "Well, are you sure you got it from there? Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm 150. I know my activity. I know where I go. I know what I do. I am 50% positive that I got it from this concert." Even with the venue as well too, they did require either having a negative test to come in or showing proof of vaccination, but that's still not enough as well too. So it can help certainly, but it's not going to be a silver bullet to making sure no one's going to get sick at that concert. But even speaking of that, I did reach out to people. Like I reached out to the venue. I went to a shop on Saturday, and then I actually had a friend come over on Sunday, and I pretty much reached out to all of them, and I was like, "Hey, so this is what's going on. I ended up getting, I got COVID, and for the venue, I said, I know I got it from your venue. Not mad, I'm just making you all aware of it. The shop, I did let them know, and then my friend, I let him know as well, too. And thank goodness, I felt really bad about that, but he kept testing, and even like a week out, he didn't have any symptoms. He kept coming up negative. So thankfully, he did not get it from me, even though he came over on Sunday. And that's when I was, showing a little bit of something. He came over during the day and I didn't get bad until the evening. But the point is, I know I still had it at that point. I just didn't know. But as for the recovery for me, honestly, what I did was at one point I used, contactless delivery, I guess, to just get some groceries and such, have them just put them in my trunk. And a part of that was getting Theraflu. One of my good friends ended up, or best friends, like he recommended taking that. So really it's just what I did. I continued to work because what I was doing it just, at a desktop. So it's fine. It's not physically taxing, thankfully. But on Monday, that was probably the worst day for me, where I was definitely tired, definitely feeling it. But really, it was just more my friend who recommended Theraflu for me. COVID's kicked his butt quite a bit, so he was kind of, I guess, the subject matter expert and kind of helping to guide me through it. And for me, I was like, this is very much appreciated, but thankfully mine is pretty mild. For me, it was mostly that first week. It was, I would work, and if I wasn't at work, I would sleep. Those are like the two things I was doing. And every few hours I'd wake up. So when I would wake up, I'd use the bathroom, I'd take Lily out, I'd make more Theraflu, drink that, go back to bed. So one nice thing is that I was getting 12 to 14 hours of sleep every night. For the first time in years. I don't remember the last time I really did that. So I did feel a lot more refreshed in that regard. But at the same time, it was pretty much an entire week where I kind of had to just hit the stop button on my life. So even the week after that was spent doing things that I would typically do, during my week, like chores or things to enjoy myself or what have you. But I couldn't because it's kind of like a week of my life was almost just kind of deleted in a way. It's just like, I had to put that on stop completely. But it's all good. I used it for recovery time, and I did really need that recovery time. I'm also really thankful I did have friends and family checking in on me and, making sure I was okay. They were worried a few times because sometimes they would reach out to me and they wouldn't hear back from me for hours, so they'd try to call me or something. And I would just tell them, like, yo, I'm sleeping. So I've told people, like, at the time, I said, hey, I really appreciate you looking out for me and, being worried. But if you love me, the best thing you can do, after 6 p.m., leave me alone, please. Like, if I don't get back to you, I am sleeping. Like, I need that time. And the sleep really did help. Like, I was feeling much better every few hours and especially every day. So I was absolutely improving. But for me, I noticed at one point I had pretty much every single symptom that if you just like look up COVID symptoms, so it's like, like sniffles, coughing, a headache, fever, loss of taste or smell. I did have a loss of taste for 2 days, but each day it was only for like 3 or 4 hours at a time. So that was kind of odd, and thankfully I was able to get it back. Like everything was all good there. However, the only one I did not have was diarrhea. Like that was the only symptom I did not have out of all the typical COVID symptoms. So that was fine. I'm not looking forward to that is what I'm saying. So it was okay there. But either way, like that was pretty much my experience on it. And I would say probably by like 2 weeks in, I was testing negative. I felt like 95% there. And by like 3 weeks after, initially having it, I felt pretty healed up there. So that's how it's been for me. Thank goodness. We're all good in that regard. But yeah, I know I did share about it on social media, and there were people who were, concerned and, sending positive vibes and everything and prayers and all that. And, I really appreciate it all. So thank you very much. I truly appreciate it. Thankfully, I was able to recover. I just had to do as close to nothing as possible. Thankfully, mine wasn't bad. Thank goodness. But it also wasn't, a whole asymptomatic thing. It was mild, but I would not recommend getting COVID. I would not recommend people experience it. So that's how it was. One on the opposite, though. One very good experience I had was after that first week, once I was able to have enough energy to actually do something. So like that first week, I was just completely, wiped out, tired, not doing anything, doing as close to nothing as possible. The second week, I was still wanting to keep to myself, but I had energy to do stuff. So I finally opened up my Xbox Series X. And I'm saying finally here because at the time I had gotten this system probably about 2.5 months prior. I'm not going to go into major details. I'm just going to say that this year has been super, super rough for me, and I was not in a great place for a while. So even when I got the Xbox Series X, I got it in March. And it was the type of thing where it's like, when you're really down and out and depressed and it's like something that you've been excited about, you can't get excited for at all. That's what happened to me. Like I got it in the mail, and I quite literally, I remember I took it out the shipping box and I put it up on my kitchen counter, and I was like, why did I buy this? Like, I don't even want it now. Like, why did I buy this? But I knew I was going to use it. So what I did was I just, took it to my game room and put it brand new in box, just kept it on the floor there. And thankfully, after about 2 months of owning it, I felt well enough to open it up. And then I got really, really busy one weekend, so I couldn't open it then. Then another weekend, I got super busy. Then I got sick. So for about 2 weeks after I felt better, mentally at least, for about 2 weeks, I still couldn't open up the system just because I was busying myself and I was sick. Then once I finally got to a better point physically there, I finally opened it up. I've been using it, and I'm not even really playing anything new on there. It's funny. I just the thing that got me excited was I ended up getting Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway. One of my coworkers mentioned the Brothers in Arms series, and I remembered that game, and I was like, I really like that game. And I was disappointed to find out that I had sold it years ago. So I found a copy of it on eBay for like $9, picked it up, and I was super content. I was going to play it on the 360. And then I remembered backwards compatibility is a thing. And I looked it up, and I was like, wait, it's backwards compatible. Wait, I have a brand new Series X sitting downstairs. I'm going to go ahead and open this thing up. So I finally opened it up, finally hooked it up, and I could have played it on the Xbox One X, but I didn't want to. I wanted to play it on a Series console, and I have had a Series S since December, I want to say, but I haven't used it all that much just because I still need to finish it. I didn't finish Halo Infinite, And any time I wanted to play something on Xbox, it was disc-based, and obviously you can't use them on the Series S, so I was kind of just waiting there. There was even a few times I did not pick up games because I saw like an Xbox One game for cheap or something. I was like, oh, well, I have the Series S right now, and I don't want to play this on the One X. So it was always like that for me. However, I have gotten a few games here and there now, but the point being, Brothers in Arms is what got me to open up the system and hook it up. And then as I hooked it up, I got it all set up, and I was like, okay, cool, the interface is the exact same thing as the Series S, like, whatever, it's fine. Then I remembered, wait, backwards compatibility. Not only that's the whole point I opened this thing up for right now, but I then looked at my shelves and I saw my Xbox and my Xbox 360 games, and I kind of looked back at the Series X, and I put two and two together, quite literally. So I was like a kid in a damn candy store. I was grabbing games off my shelves for the original and the Xbox 360. I was popping them into the console. I was installing them. I did put some new stuff on there, like I put Halo Infinite on there. I went through Game Pass. I downloaded a few games there as well too. But am I playing Xbox One games or Xbox Series X, like series games? No, I'm not. I'm really just playing original Xbox and Xbox 360 games, and I don't regret that at all, because I'm using the console and it's making me happy, so that's fine. But what was the game that I ended up playing? I got this, well, no, I just got it, like, I opened it. The thing that pushed me to open it was playing Brothers in Arms, and I did play that a little bit, and certainly not a bad game. I remember I absolutely loved it, but it's also a certain type of game as well too, with the gameplay and such, and you can't just hop into it and just run and gun as easily. So I was like, okay, let me put this down for now. Maybe I need to be in the right mood to play it. But the first game I actually played and went start to finish on was the original Max Payne. I was gonna say I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure I know why. I've been the past few months, I've been thinking about Max Payne off and on, like the game series itself, just how I've appreciated it, how I liked it. And then that episode, the last episode with Badger Goodger on there, where we were talking about Max Payne 3 and the other Max Payne games, I'm just like, damn, I want to play this again. Not even that one, but there was an episode a few months ago with Colin on there, where we did talk about the Max Payne series, although much less, but we talked about it on there. So I had played through them, and I own all of them on Xbox and Xbox 360. But what happened was it was super magical, because this is where, I guess, backwards compatibility, the true appreciation of it, clicked for me. Like, I've always been a proponent of backwards compatibility. I've always supported it. I've always wanted it in consoles. But I just sat there and see the original Xbox is my first ever game console that I had. I still have my first ever original Xbox. I still have it. I've even maintained, I've said, when this thing breaks, I'm not going to get rid of it. And thankfully, because the original Xbox scene is so awesome, like, every single fix is documented. So even if my original console breaks, I'm confident I can get it back up and running. And if I can't get it back up and running, damn it, I'm going to find someone who can get it back up and running. Like, that thing is not going to die. That is my first system ever. But the point being on there is that was my first system, and one of the first games that I got for it was Max Payne. It might have been the fourth or fifth game that my parents got me for this system. I should not have been playing it at that young of an age, but it looked so cool from the trailers. I think I rented it. I enjoyed it. And then for some reason, my mom was cool enough to buy it for me. Either way, I still have that original copy that was bought in, 2002, that my mom got me while I was at school. I still have that. I still have it on my shelf. Never got rid of it. That is the original. I am the only owner of this copy of it. And it was just so cool to me that, yeah, in the other room, I have my first ever original Xbox that I played Max Payne on that same disc. But in 2022, I can get the latest Xbox, put that same disc in there, and even if I can't play it natively, it's going to download a Series X compatible version, and I'll be able to use that disc as an unlock key to play it. And I find that to be absolutely beautiful and incredibly pro-consumer as well too, because I have right now, my Series X is full of games, and I really haven't had to pay anything for them. I have Game Pass, so there's a few games that I've picked up on there, but because I've just loaded it with Xbox and Xbox 360 games, these are games that I've had for years that are on my shelf that are good games, and now they have all these extra enhancements. They're going to, I think the original Xbox games, they do play at native 4K. I don't remember. I know the 360 games, certain games have auto HDR. There's also games that boost up the frame rate as well too. So you get all those nice performance enhancements. Because I've only finished the first Max Payne, I've only finished it once before. I actually used that same game on my first Xbox 360, which that one I do not have anymore because that one just got foobarred essentially. But my first Xbox 360, I played Max Payne on there, and it was through the backwards compatibility program. It was mostly fine, but man, that game had some real bad performance, real bad slowdown when there was a lot of enemies on screen, and I didn't have that at all on the Series X, so that was great. But I still love the first one. I will acknowledge though, it does feel dated. First of all, when you're playing it on the on Series X, well, just through the backwards compatibility program there, it is in 4:3. It's not a widescreen presentation, so you know that takes away from it being a bit more modern. It would have been nice that could have been updated, but it's all good. It's fine. Performance, fantastic on there. I really didn't have any issues with it. But even just like playing the game, it's definitely not 3D Realm's first game. I know that, but how do I say, it feels like the first Max Payne game. It feels like the first game in a series where it's like, okay, they're still working things out. They are still working out, the world itself. They're still working out the controls and everything. Like, that's all still kind of being ironed out. I know one of my friends had said that it plays best on PC and it was just designed for that, and I will acknowledge that. And that's even another thing too. You can tell it's like, oh, this was a PC game from 2002 that was ported over to console when console porting was still kind of a new thing and people weren't really doing it properly there. But they certainly did a valiant job, and the thing that really does help out with it is the aim assist is incredibly strong on this. So that was super helpful. But I have to say, I absolutely love the first game. There's scenes from it, there's lines from there that are just burned into my memory. And despite the jank, despite feeling the age on it, I absolutely love the first one. Now, the second game, I don't remember that much of. I remember that's a game I also only beat one time, and it was actually in 1 week, I finished all 3 games. I was just burning through them. But it was like, I think within 2 days, I finished the first Max Payne. Within 24 hours, I finished the second Max Payne. And the third one did take 3 days, maybe, something like that. But either way, I was playing through them, and when I went on to Max Payne 2, I've always said, like, people seem to say Max Payne 2 is just so much better, and it was a lot better than the second one, and people say it's like their favorite game. Some people say it's their favorite game of all time. And I just remember I did 2 serious playthroughs of it. One time I played it on the 360, like right after I finished the first one, and I got like halfway through the game and I got stuck, and I remember I wasn't really feeling it that much compared to the first one. Then I played it again before Max Payne 3 came out, and I don't remember that much from it. I always remember that the second game is good, but like, here's the thing, I love the first Max Payne. I love the third Max Payne. The second one I thought was like good. It's not a bad game, it's just, it was good to me. So this is even the nice thing after playing it so many years later, and now even just looking at it as more of an adult and looking at it in a more mature light, I have much more of an appreciation for it. I do think it's a great game. I think it is an excellent sequel. Like, that is a sequel done right. But how do I say, it's you can tell where they were going much different on it. Where the first one, I think I like it because the first one, it's so dark, it's so gritty. it's so direct in your face. It gets demonic and scary at times. It's an incredibly twisted game. The first one's very twisted. The second one is more mature in terms of themes, in terms of kind of telling a messed up love story in there as well too. And they went much more cinematic in the second one. You can tell that is definitely what they were pushing, what they were aiming for. They gameplay wise, tech wise, they did everything better than the first one. But for whatever reason, I like the writing more. Well, they did better than the first one, but like I like the writing on the first game more than the second one. I think a part of it is just because for some reason, and this is just my personal opinion, for some reason the lines, the quotes, the dialogue and everything in that first game just hit so much harder to me, and it's just so much more memorable. While as the second one, it's enjoyable, it fits into the story and everything, but the first one just really hits me that much harder. And I can't quite put my finger on it, but that's just how I have to describe it. So the first one I like a lot more. But the second one there, like, still great game. Still very fun to play through. Definitely a sequel incredibly well done. Then there was a huge break between the two. And there was even news of there's going to be a Max Payne 1 and 2 remaster type thing going on. That was announced. That kind of broke the internet for a little bit because the website that was announcing it quite literally went down from all the traffic that was going to it. So I feel like I was going to say, if they took all the technical enhancements they put into Max Payne 2 and slipstreamed them into Max Payne 1, I think Max Payne 1 would be just like a perfect game. And it wouldn't even compare to the second one for me. So maybe this is their opportunity to do that. I guess we'll see. And I am looking forward to that remaster remake type situation. But then the third game came out years and years later. And this, again, a game I've only finished one time in my life. I got it on launch, and it took me about 5 days to finish it back then. And this is the... excuse me. Oh, that cough was... I was trying to hold that back, but I couldn't for like 30 minutes. Either way, I played Max Payne 3, but this was the thing I also noticed with all these games. I felt like I was, like, years ago when I was playing them, I was very much enjoying them, but I was getting through them just to get through them. But this time around, I was spending less time on them. I was getting through them faster, but I was also taking in much more detail with it and messing around more and looking at the environment more. So it was this kind of odd conundrum, because I also noticed, I'm like, well, wait, I feel like as I get older, I'm supposed to get kind of worse at games, especially because, I'm getting out of practice. I don't play as often as I used to. But I'm like, this is weird. All these games also feel much easier to me now. Like, that's not typically how that works, so I thought that was strange. But Max Payne 3, because of how I was, I guess, it had a very unintended consequence. I always remember, like, a few sections of Max Payne 3 that are just kind of burned into my brain. And I always remember recommending it. I always remember thinking it was an excellent game. But I couldn't remember that much detail of what happened. Like, if someone brings up, oh, do you remember this map or this map or this or this or this? I'm like, I don't remember most of the details from the game. And I remember now, because I looked at, like, the dates that I unlocked my achievements originally, and I had to look back at my life, and I was like, wait, I was going through a really bad time back then, because the game came out, like, May of 2012, and that was, like, just after my first year of college. At the time, I was a computer science major. That was not for me, so I actually, about half a year later, in 2013, I switched majors and excelled at that point. But computer science, I was not failing it, but I was doing incredibly poor in there, and I was just super stressed out. And I just remember not being in that not being a great time in my life. And even looking back now, it's like, is this going to be a depressing episode? I don't know. But I was like, I had to be depressed then, because it's like, I don't remember that much as I don't really remember that many details. The details that I do remember from the game are I remember playing multiplayer, which is nice because multiplayer is dead now, unfortunately. Like, it's disabled. You can't even play multiplayer at all. And I remember the beginning sequences, like the first level or two, because I played that a few times because I did a review of Max Payne 3 years ago, gave it a glowing review on there. And I remember like two other sections of the game. I remember Max going to New Jersey, like in the graveyard, and I remember the airport level when the song from Health is playing, like the one that was used in the promotional material, like that was playing. Those are the sections of the game that I remember. What I'm saying here is it's nice to play it now because not only I have more appreciation for it 10 years later, but because I forgot like 90% of the details from this game, it was like I was playing it for the first time. So whenever there was a plot twist, whenever there was a surprise, whenever there was something crazy that happened, I was screaming, I was hollering, I was freaking out, and Max Payne 3 is phenomenal. And what I'm going to say here is it's not to put the game down, but it's so weird with it. The game plays so differently than the other two. Even the way the cutscenes are unfolding and just how the plot unfolds and how everything happens. It's a much longer game as well, too, because, well, there's actual cutscenes this time around. It's not just, comics. It's not just even a short cutscene like you see in the first two games. They are 5 to 10 minute sections, and many times you can't skip them because the game it uses that cutscene to load the game in the background. There's a lot of loading that's happening. So that's also why it's like Max Payne 2, I beat it within 24 hours, but Max Payne 3, it took me maybe 3 days or so to finish that game, because it's a long game. It's quite good. It is quite good. It's excellent, but it plays so differently. And even the writing on there is different as well, too. But it plays so differently to the point where it doesn't even feel like a Max Payne game compared to the first two. It feels like an incredibly well-done, fantastic third-person shooter featuring the character Max Payne. Because it's even to the point where if someone wants to play the Max Payne games and they jump into Max Payne 3, there's no issue with that. There is enough context that's provided and enough that is explained that you can pick up what happened in the first two games. And even so, if you played the first two games, like I went from 1 to 2 to 3, right back to back to back from each other. And the only things I really gained from playing those games is there were references to the previous ones. That was about it. But like it didn't have flashback scenarios. It didn't have, remastered cutscenes. It didn't even have like the comics that were that was displayed in the first two games to, share the plot line and such on there. So even just for example, like little things such as when Max Payne at one point, kind of a spoiler, but the games are 10, 15, 20 years old now at this point. Which is scary to think that the newest game is over 10 years old, but either way, at one point, Max, there is a level where he goes to New Jersey, or I guess he's flashing back there. It's kind of telling a little bit of the story of how he got to where he is in Max Payne 3, but he's in a graveyard, and there are a few graves that you can visit, and these graves that you can interact with are characters from the first two games, and it will like show the gravestone and it shows the character's name, and Max will talk about it a little bit, and that is like the most that happens there. So it's kind of one of those things where if you've played the first two games, like, oh, okay, like I remember that character, but if you haven't played them, it's like, oh, okay, this is a character that Max has some history with. So you can go in completely blind. If you've never played the first two, you can jump into Max Payne 3. And what I'm saying is you won't feel like you're really missing out on anything. I'm pretty confident in saying that. And I've even seen it demonstrated because one of my best friends from years and years ago, we're still best friends, of course, but like years ago when we were living in the same town, one night he was about to leave my place and he was kind of looking at my game collection. He was like, oh, Max Payne 3, I've heard of that. Is that a good game? And I'm just like, what, you haven't played this game? He said, no, I've never played any of the Max Payne games. And I remember, I think I had the disc somewhere else, but I took it off the shelf. I took the discs, I put them in there. I just gave him the case. I'm like, don't come back until you finish that game. He's like, well, are you sure? I'm like, yes, like, do me a favor, take that home, play it, don't come back until you finish it. And it's funny because he played it, he was telling me about it. I don't think he texted me about it at all. But then 4th of July, we had a get together. I invited him to a friend's place that we were meeting at. And I just remember, like, we were in my friend's basement, and all of a sudden my friend, he grabs my shoulders and just shakes. He's like, oh my God, Max Payne, I gotta tell you about this. And it blew his damn mind. It blew him out of the water. And he is a person who, he did not play any of the Max Payne games. He didn't know anything about them, but he jumped right into Max Payne 3. And when people say it's one of the best games ever made, like, it seriously is. So it was great. Even with this on Series X, playing through it there, I really didn't run into any issues with it. I think, actually, I forgot to say, the only issue I ran into with backwards compatibility on all of them was I noticed Max Payne 2 had the most issues. I think in maybe the first one there was like an audio issue. The second one, there was 1 or 2 audio issues. I think maybe 1 visual issue. At one point, I did have to... The game soft locked on me. I loaded up a checkpoint, I messed up, I went back to load that checkpoint up about 2 seconds later, and the game started loading back in, and it just stopped loading. And I let it sit there for like a minute, which is a really long time, because on the Series X with the SSD on there, the load times are like 2 or 3 seconds, especially on these old games like this. So that was easy enough, though. All I did was I closed out of the game, reopened it, didn't have the issue again. So overall, it was a pretty seamless experience, and I would dare I say even I've had more issues with these games back in the day than I did now, so that was nice as well too. But yeah, what can I say? Max Payne's the GOAT, man. Max Payne's awesome. Speaking of some more game related stuff as well too, I ended up getting bitten with a new modding bug. I have a little bit of a sickness, you all. It's not just COVID, it's not like a cold or anything. I have seen Game Boy mods, right? And I've started modding up a few Game Boy systems. Now, I've done one before, but pretty recently I did 2 of them. And it's now resulted in me buying kits for all of my Game Boys, and they're coming in the mail, so I'm going to have to wait a few more months because, I'm just importing them from China. But I ended up doing 2 of them. Now, I went to a swap meet at one point, and I bought a Game Boy, like the original, the brick. I bought the DMG model from there. And I was surprised to see these things went up in price. Like, if I looked on eBay, for example. If I want to find one working, stock, and in like good condition, I have to pay like $80 or $90 for it. So I was seeing all these, and I was like, damn, like the Game Boy is really that expensive now? Oh, okay. Let me get some water real quick. Oh, excuse me. So I did find one, though. I found a DMG. There was a seller who had it at their table, and it was for $30. And it said lines on it. So I was like, hey, what's going on here? So he popped in a game, he fired it up, and there was just vertical lines, like, all over the screen. And I went back and forth on this. Like, I probably walked past this booth maybe 5 times. I was thinking about it. And I looked into it as well, too. And this is a notable problem. And you can fix it pretty easily from what I've seen. It doesn't seem all too hard. It's just you take the Game Boy apart. You need to get to the screen. You need to remove a little bit of adhesive. And then you pretty much just need to reflow the pins on the screen itself. You need to take a hot soldering iron, take a little bit of solder, and just reflow the pins, just slowly kind of massaging them back and forth. And after a few minutes of that, if you do it carefully and properly, you should have a perfectly working screen again. So I was thinking of possibly doing that. But I also looked and I saw that entire mod kits for the original Game Boy were not that much. I ended up getting one off AliExpress, which was a IPS screen with a full shell, fresh buttons, and fresh rubber pads for the buttons for like $55. That was before tax. So I kind of looked at it. I said, $55, let's round up $60 for this, $30 for the Game Boy. Yeah, I think this will be a fun project, like $90 overall for a modded DMG. I think that would be, fun to mess around with. So I decided to buy it. I was like, you know what, I'm going to take my chance. At least it works. I'll buy it. The only other issue was that whoever owned it before let the batteries corrode in there something fierce. Like, it wasn't just that, like, the terminals were green. It's like they were blue and fuzzy. Like, it looked like Cookie Monster sneezed in there or something. So I ended up cleaning up the terminals super well. The console was still working. Turns out I didn't even have to do that, because when I reshelled it, the terminals and connectors on there, there were brand new ones in the new shell, because all I needed was the motherboard. But that's what I ended up doing. I got the shell, I got the screen and everything. And, I have to say, this is going to be my recommendation going forward now at this point. If I get a lot of people, I'm sure you all listening can imagine, I get a lot of people asking me, hey, I want to kind of get into hardware mods. I've done these soft mods. They're cool. Like, I've soft modded a Wii. I've soft modded an Xbox. But I want to do something hardware. But, I don't know what, soldering iron to get. I don't know what solder I should get. Okay, cool. Now I ordered this stuff. But what should I do? Like, should I put in like a PS1 mod chip? Should I do a PS2 mod chip? That looks really difficult. What about like an Xbox 360 RGH? Like, do you think RGH is a good beginner mod on there? This is going to be my recommendation now for anybody who you're kind of afraid, you're a beginner, you want to get into console mods. Get yourself a DMG, get yourself a reshell and screen kit for it, and accomplish and successfully accomplish doing that. I say this because it is a portable, so mind you, like, it's a handheld, so mind you, it's going to be small, but compared to other even full-size consoles, but other handhelds that I've worked on, the DMG, it is incredibly easy to take apart. It is resilient. There's one that survived a war, like survived like a bombing and everything, and it still works just fine. So they're incredibly resilient, incredibly strong. They are bricks. And because it was made in 1989, it was a different time back then. I don't mean that like superficially. I mean like stuff was made repairable. So it is so easy to open this thing up. And when you get in there, even though it is a handheld, for something that is a handheld and, supposed to be small, everything in there is pretty big. So as long as you have two pretty good working hands and you have the proper, screwdrivers for this, you need a tri-wing and you need a small Phillips head screwdriver, you can rip apart the whole console with no issue. And when you do this, you get a little bit of everything. You get to do a cool aesthetic mod. You get to swap out the screen. You have to take apart the system. You should be cleaning it. You might have to do some maintenance. You have to put it all back together. There's even a little bit of soldering, a tiny bit of soldering that is required, but soldering nonetheless. You do have to desolder the old, speaker. You have to desolder the speaker. It's just two wires. That's it. You desolder the speaker from the the old board, and then you have to solder it into the new one. So what I'm saying is once you do all of that, if you can successfully take a DMG and shell swap it, case swap it, put a new screen in there, get it all back together and working, that will give you an incredibly awesome vertical slice of everything. You learn how to take something apart, how to put it together, probably even some maintenance, some cleaning, because you should be cleaning everything on there. What else? Like even a little bit of soldering. You get to flex some artistic skills. You have to do kind of attention to detail with lining up the screen and everything, getting the alignment properly set up. You get a good feel for everything. And from there, you can kind of pivot into what you want to do. So if you really like the screen settings on there, you can get into, doing more upgraded screens. If you really like the maintenance, well, you can start maintaining your other hardware. If you really liked the soldering for those two wires, you can start looking into mod chip installs or, a few other things that require soldering. If you like, the whole reshell type process, but you want to make it a little bit your own, do what my dude Rocker Gaming is doing. You can get into the world of custom like casting and molds of buttons and just crazy, awesome, amazing artistic abilities right there. So that is why I that's going to be my recommendation just going forward for anybody who asks me, hey, I got a little bit of money, I want to do something, like, what should I do here? Plus, the cool thing is, once you do all of this, if you like the Game Boy, you have an incredibly awesome Game Boy now in front of you. And if you don't like the Game Boy, you can now sell it as a modded DMG. So there's not really a bad scenario here. Like, that's what I love about this. There's also a whole ton of extra mods on there as well, too. So, of course, there's, screen repair if you don't want to, replace the screen. You could even it depends on the screen you want. You could do a bivert mod, you can do a backlight mod, you can do a whole screen replacement, which is like what I did and what I'd recommend as well, too. It's easier and it's better. So, yeah, rechargeable batteries. There's the Game Boy modding community is awesome from what I've observed. So I have my own DMG now at this point. I have like a fully modded one. I would say I've been pretty happy with it. And I did this because it was kind of a little bit of practice for another mod I did here, which this was for my girlfriend's sister. Now, my girlfriend hit me up and she's like, hey, how much does a Game Boy Advance with like a backlit screen go for? Because I'm looking these up and my sister kind of wants one, and they are they're kind of expensive. And I pretty much told her, like, first of all, no, you're not going to pay someone to do the mod. You're not going to pay for that labor when you're dating me, of all people. This is what we're going to do. We're going to buy a mod kit. I'm going to look for a Game Boy Advance, and I'm going to do the mod myself. And she was super happy and super thankful for that. She didn't want to bug me initially, and I'm like, no, like, please use me for this, please. Because also I was like, look, it's something I enjoy doing. It's fun. Plus, I get to make a video about it as well, too. So it's like, you're helping me out. But what I did was I ended up doing the same thing there. I actually went out and I bought a Game Boy Advance in town, and I didn't realize that I actually had a couple Game Boy Advance systems sitting in my cache of systems. So I looked after I bought this one, right? I looked and I found one in terrible shape. It worked, but the front plastic was off, the screen was dusty, and it should be a crime that the Game Boy Advance released, the original one released, with the screen that it did. Because I tried playing Max Payne on there, and that you can't see hardly anything on that screen. I was outraged by it, so that's why the mod is real nice. But we ended up doing the same thing, so I actually just said, I was like, you know what, hey, we got some more money saved. I'm just going to eat the cost on this Game Boy. And the one that I found in my basement here, I don't even remember buying this thing. And looking at the condition, I probably bought it at a thrift store for like no more than $20. And I know I bought it because it worked and it was probably cheap and I was probably going to do something with it, but it's fine. Because aesthetically, the console, like how it looks, does not matter to me. In fact, when I was going to a few game shops, there was a few Game Boy Advances I passed up on because they were not only they were more expensive, but they were in like excellent shape. And I'm just like, I don't want to gut one of these. Like, this is in good shape here. I really don't want to do that. So when I found one that was in incredibly rough shape, I'm like, hey, it looks ugly, but it works. Boom. That's exactly what I need. Because the only thing I need from this console is the motherboard. That's it. And the motherboard was in surprisingly excellent shape. Like, it wasn't grimy or dirty or anything, so that was fine. But what I did was I took that apart and, a little bit harder than a DMG. For me, because I've soldered enough, it was pretty easy. For me, at least, it was easy enough. But that's why for the DMG, I recommend that, because even the Game Boy Advance compared to the original DMG, everything on the DMG is just so much bigger and much friendlier to work with. Either way, though, when I worked on the Game Boy Advance, I took the original one apart. It was a Glacier one that was in awful shape. Took the motherboard out, cleaned it up. Then I ended up reshelling it. Now, I reshelled it into a delicious looking green system. It has brand new buttons, brand new like bumpers, I guess you can say, brand new triggers on there, brand new rubber pads for the buttons as well too. And again, a beautiful, beautiful IPS display. Beautiful. Like, it looks immaculate. I've put up pictures of it, like, on Twitter and Instagram, and seeing it, like, in person, actually using it, feeling it, that's how the Game Boy Advance should have been. It is excellent. Like, I'm very proud of this install. I'm super happy with it. And soldering on that one was optional, although I decided to do it because it's only 3 wires on the ribbon for the mod itself, like between the screen and everything else. There's 3 breakout pads for left, right, and select. And all you do is you tack 3 wires on there, you solder them to the proper points on the motherboard. And once you do all of that, you can then use the select button. You hold down the select button and you press the left trigger to decrease brightness and the right trigger to increase it, and there are 10 brightness settings. So it looks great, it runs perfectly. I'm incredibly happy with the results on it. It's actually so good it convinced me to do the rest of my Game Boys because I'm like, damn, well, now I want one of these. Like, this is not mine. It's mine to use for the time being until I pass it on to my girlfriend's sister, but I want one. I really want one of these now because this is too nice not having. Am I going to use it that much? Probably not. But do I want it? Yes, I absolutely want it. It's going to be cool to mess around with. So there's going to be some of those coming here soon as well too. But I've had just such a fun time modding up these Game Boys and messing around with them and just restoring them and doing something super cool with these. I did end up finding one kind of locally. There was a shop that was selling one. It was actually the exact Game Boy Advance we were looking for, and funny enough, like depending on what it was, it would have been a little bit less money, because for me, I ended up paying about $75-$80 for the mod kit, because I got it domestically, I didn't import it, and I paid $70 for the Game Boy I was going to use. But I ended up finding actually the exact color and mod and everything. I found one already pre-modded locally for $120. I did pass on it though for a few reasons. One was I looked at it and I wasn't happy with the mod work on there. First of all, the screen, it had smudges on it, and it was either the glass, like the inside of the glass, or the screen itself, or both. But it looked like it looked like somebody cleaned a window with bootleg Windex and it leaves those streaks. So it was like very streaky on the inside. And the shop was telling me, they're like, oh, well, once you play it, you can't really tell. I'm like, I can still tell. You could also tell that the system itself, it was used. It wasn't like super gross, but there was kind of a little bit of like a liquid that had dried around the left trigger. And I was like, if this is a gift for someone, I don't really want to present this to them, And then the other thing was whoever modded it before clearly could not solder, or even worse, they soldered improperly because the screen brightness was not working. I tried it, and I was just, because it's an optional thing that you can do, but I tried it and I could not get the screen brightness to adjust. So even with that, I could have gotten it for a little less, and then, fix up the work. But I'm like, I don't want to clean this up. I don't want to fix it. Also, just kind of as a present type thing, I'm like, you know what? No, it's fine. I'm going to buy the mod kit. It's going to have a reshell. And at that point, it's going to be like a fresh, crispy, like it's going to feel like a brand new system for someone. So I think that makes a better gift for someone, in my opinion, at least. Plus, I'm going to be the one working on it, so I'm going to know the intricacy of the mod. I'm going to know the details of what happened in there. I guess the one that was already pre-modded and for sale, it was kind of very much a thing of like, at least you tried. Like it worked, but was it good? Like, no, I wasn't happy with the attention to detail on there, or the lack of attention to detail. I guess that was just me personally. But yeah, so there was that. That's the thing that I've been bitten with here recently. Been loving Game Boy mods, and there's definitely going to be more that I'm going to work on. So I have also recorded some videos for them as well too. I have no idea when they're going to come out, but I've gotten this stuff documented here too. Oh boy. So I'll go ahead and we're getting to the 1 hour point here. There was another story or two I was thinking of, but no, I think I'm going to do a couple other things instead. So I try and do this if I can on these solo episodes. I like to tell a story or two from my game store days. For anyone who does not know, for about 2.5 years, I worked at a, like mom and pop game store. Unfortunately, it's been out of business for a while, but I worked there from ages 16 to 18, and it was during the heat of the 7th generation. So it was definitely a real fun time to be working there. But let's see. I'm just kind of looking at my list of what I wanted to share here. So I think there was this one I'll share. This is about a disc being resurfaced. And for anyone who doesn't know, that's like it's if you have a disc that is scratched, not gouged, but like if it's scratched, so on the bottom of the disc, you can actually most of the time run it through a disc resurfacer, like a disc buffing machine. They go through different names, but typically a disc resurfacer, and you can revive that disc and make the bottom absolutely sparkle and get rid of most, if not all, of the scratches on there. Now, I've resurfaced probably thousands of discs at this point, because I worked there for like 2.5 years. Also, I have my own disc resurfacer as well too. It's not as nice as the ones that we used, but it's more affordable, it's smaller, it does one disc at a time, it's fine. The JFG Easy Pro is some good stuff. So we had a service back then where not only we would resurface our own discs, so if any discs came in that were in, scratched up, bad shape, we would fix them up before we put them out onto the floor. So you were guaranteed you were going to get a good looking disc. And even worst case, if you got one, it was like scratched up, like if we missed it, we would do it. And even if you took it home and it didn't work and you brought it back, we would try and fix it up. And if it still didn't work, our policy was like within 7 days, if you bring it back with a receipt, if it's defective, we'll swap it out for the same item. If not, we'll just give you credit on there. But we had a service for this as well too. And I want to say it was $2.99 per disc. So if you had a disc, you bring it to us, $2.99, we get you fixed right up. A lot of the popular ones were the Xbox 360 discs that had the circle of death on them. Now, if you don't know about this, maybe some people have experienced it and they're getting flashbacks, but if you don't know about this, it works on every single model of the 360. I'm not saying you should do it, but I'm saying this is how it works. You take your disc, you pop it into the console. As the disc is spinning, move the console around, and you will hear an awful noise. And what that noise is the laser hitting the disc. And typically when it does that, it gets a perfect circular scratch on the disc. And many times it will, at best, make some of that data unreadable. At most, you won't be able to use that disc at all. Like, you try and boot it up and it's just not going to work properly. However, that is fixable. A lot of people did break their games that way and they didn't know what to do. But if you know of someone or know a place that has a disc resurfacer, you give it to them, pay whatever you need to. They spend a few minutes working on it, and if they have a good resurfacer, they can actually fix it up. And I say good resurfacer because we knew of some shops that had the same thing where they had the service, but they didn't really have a good disc resurfacer for this. And we quite literally knew someone at one point while our resurfacer was out of commission. We recommended to friends like, hey, go to that other place. They went there. They came back. Their disc looked worse. And we're just like, we are so sorry. I mean, what you could do, since your disc is already broken, because we knew the guy, we're like, you could leave it with us, and like once we get our resurfacer back in and working, we can fix it up for you, and there's that. And then it looked mint after, I'm telling you, like mint condition. But either way, there was not much that we couldn't fix. The only things we couldn't fix was top scratches. If you had scratches on the label and you held up the disc to light and you could see through, that data was never coming back. You can resurface that thing 1,000 times and it's never going to get fixed because that data is gone. It's not the scratches, it's the data is gone, and any gouges. So typical scratches are fine, but if there was plastic like gouged out of the bottom of the disc, you can't fix that either, unfortunately. So either way, what ended up happening was, this is actually after I'd worked there. So I'd already put in my time and everything. And what would happen was, during some weekends or during some breaks and stuff, I would go to my old stomping ground and I'd be hanging out there. I'd be talking. I'd be buying a few things because I was friends with all the employees there. Like, they were legitimately my friends, and I enjoyed talking with them, hanging out with them, all that fun stuff. And I would think that they liked hanging out with me as well, too. Made their day go by a little bit easier. The point is, there was one family who had come in twice. Both times I was there, and it was on different days. But what happened was, there was I want to say it was them. Yeah. I was kind of getting my story mixed up, but no, I'm pretty sure it was them. I think they even came in 3 times, but I wasn't there in like the middle time. So the first time they ended up coming in, they brought a disc in, and I remember it was like that Disney game, like that Disneyland game for Connect. I can remember what it was, and it was a mom and her kids. And I just remember at the time, I think this is another time, the disc resurfacer was out of commission at this store. So my manager, he was talking with them, and they said, well, we took this over to GameStop because the disc is all scratched up. And it was a circular scratch. So they said the disc is all scratched up, and we took it to GameStop, and they recommended that we come over here because GameStop doesn't fix up discs. And then what happened was, my manager said, well, that's fine. Unfortunately, we can't fix it for you because our disc resurfacer is broken. And the mom got like really upset by it. And she's like, what? Like, but GameStop told us to come over here. She kept saying that. And my manager, he was real nice about it. And he was like, well, ma'am, I'm sorry. We'd love to fix this for you. But our disc resurfacer, it's currently not working. If you bring it back later in the week, we could fix it. But right now we're not able to take it. Unfortunately, we can't fix anything. So I think I kind of intervened a little bit, and because they want to know more about the scratch. So I was like, hey, do you mind if I see it? So they handed me the disc, and I remember I looked at it, I was like, oh, yep. And I pointed out to them, I was like, yeah, this is a circular scratch. This is what happened. Like, because from what I gathered, this mom, she had a few kids, and there was a boy there who was not very truthful about what happened. And I asked him, I think I even asked, like, did you move your Xbox 360? And they said no. And I was like, well, if you move the 360 with the disc in there, this is what happens. That's just how it goes. So to me, it looks like that the console was moved while the disc was spinning, and it scratched up the disc. It's a defect with the Xbox 360. It's just a problem with it. That's how it works. So I guess she kind of kept trying to talk to my manager about this, and my manager he was telling her, he was being polite, and I think even at one point she kind of asked, she's like, okay, well, what should I do? And he just silently, like, he was holding the case, and he had the disc, and he put the disc in the case, he closed up the case, and he just like put it back on the counter, and he just looked at her and smiled, and he didn't say anything. And for like the 5th or 6th time, she was just like, well, GameStop told me to come over here. And at that point, his smile just dropped right off his face, and he was like, we're not affiliated with GameStop. I don't know why they sent you over here. I don't know why you keep saying that. And she said, well, they sent me here because they said you can fix it. And he's like, and I told you, yes, we typically can, but our disc resurfacer is broken. If you'd like to bring the game back later this week, we'll be able to fix it for you. So she was annoyed, but she said, okay. So I did come back later in the week. I didn't see them again, but I guess in the interim, they did bring the disc back. They got it fixed, and it returned. So then what happened was, when I was there another night, only the boy comes in. Same boy, same game. And he has his receipt. And, my manager should not have done this, but he was nice. He was generous. He decided to do it. So the boy comes back in. He was like, hey, so the disc that you all fixed for me, it doesn't work. And the manager's just like, that's weird. It should work. We fixed it. He's like, well, I took it home and I put it in my Xbox and it doesn't work. And my manager takes it out of the case and he looks at it, and it was quite scratched. And he was like, it's scratched. It was like, well, I don't know. I don't know. And the manager's like, well, no, we fixed it. We didn't give it to you like this. Do you remember you brought it to us and we fixed the disc. We took the scratches off and we gave it back to you. So it was scratched after we gave it back to you. And this boy was just saying, he's like, well, I don't know. I don't know. And you could tell, like, we all knew what was going on. But my manager was nice about it, and he just kind of looked at it. He was like, okay, we'll fix it for you this one time. We're not going to do this again. So he didn't charge for it. He took it behind the counter. He fixed up the disc again, waited, about 2, 3, 4 minutes. Then he cleaned it and he showed it to the kid. And at this point, I guess what happened, the kid came in by himself and then the mom was parking. But during that time, she came back in and she was talking to him. She was talking to the manager as well. And he just said, he was like, well, yeah, we fixed up the disc and it did not have any scratches on it. And we gave it back to you guys earlier, but your son came back in and the disc is scratched again. So we didn't charge. We're fixing it, again for free, but we're not going to do it again. And she thanked him. And then, he showed them the disc. He showed them there was clearly no scratches on it, that it looked mint, brand new, put it back in the case, gave it to the son. My manager gave it to the son. And within a second, the mom snatched the case from him. And she was like, nope, you are not holding on to this. The last time you did that, it got scratched. Remember what happened? It was something like that. It was something along those lines. But it's just like, it was clear she did not trust this kid with that disc. I didn't see them after that, thankfully. But this was also a thing where when I was working there at the time, I had people, I recommended this multiple times because I think in about 2009 or so, the feature to install a disc to the Xbox 360 had rolled out. It was either 2008 or 2009. So sometimes we actually had people who would come in with the same disc 2 or 3 times with the same circular scratch. And I would tell them, I'd recommend, like, hey, because they would start getting annoyed. And I would just tell them, like, hey, what you should do when you get home, you should install this to your Xbox 360. And I would walk them through the process. Like, I would tell them what to do, or sometimes they called me and I would explain what to do over the phone. Sometimes we even had an Xbox 360 sitting there, like behind the counter. I would even take their disc, put it into the 360, and show them exactly how to install it. All of them appreciated it, and there was a handful of people I did that with, and every single time I did that, like, there were people who they brought in their disc for the second or third time, and then after I showed them how to install the disc, they never returned with that disc, so that was nice. Would it have, been good if we kept getting that foot traffic in, and, we kept making $3 off those fixes? I mean, sure, you be the judge of it, I guess, but I don't know. I understood their frustration. I was like, look, you don't, it's not our fault. Like, we're fixing the disc just fine, but I also understand you're frustrated because you probably have to drive across town to come back here whenever you do this, because understandably, you'd rather pay $3 than $60 for a game, to replace it. So that's what ended up happening there. That was a fun resurfacing story down memory lane, I suppose. Yeah, I think that's about it here. The last thing I was gonna say was the games that I've been playing here recently. So, getting real quick into this, I like I said, I played Max Payne 1, 2, and 3. I finished those all back to back to back. Currently, I'm playing Alan Wake right now. I'm just on like a big Remedy type kick of games, so I think even after this, I already have it installed. I'm going to play through Alan Wake, then I'm going to play through Control. I've never played Control, so I've had it for a few months now. I'm going to give that a fair shot. I think there was a lot of issues when it launched and kind of some controversies with performance and such, but at this point, like, I got it for pretty cheap. I got the complete edition. I have the PS5 upgrade, so it'll be fun to play it through there. But Alan Wake it's simultaneously awesome, like fantastic and okay at the same time to me. I don't know, that's the best way I can describe it. I can't, unlike the Max Payne games, I can't just sit there and play it and play it and play it. Like, I can only play one chapter at a night. I do each chapter in a sitting, so it's very well paced with that, but I can only play one chapter a day or one chapter per night. I can't really do any further on there, or I guess they're called episodes. But I feel like because Max Payne 3, it was developed by a whole different team and studio and such. Aside from, the writing stuff, the supernatural fighting against the darkness in Alan Wake, I feel like people predicted that Max Payne 3 was going to play something like Alan Wake did, which is realistic to think about, but I'm still happy it went the way it did either way. So I'm enjoying it, and even so, I do like that, because Alan Wake, that if you don't know the character himself, he is a writer in this game, but you can pick up on this. You can hear the inspiration from Max Payne. You can quite literally hear it. Like, there are sound effects that are lifted from the game, I swear. That's the most jarring thing for me. But even so, the character that Alan Wake writes in this fictional world is very obviously a homage to Alan Wake. Not Alan, to Max Payne. Just like this fictional character's backstory and everything, even like the stories that are being written here, you can tell that Alan Wake is pretty much writing Max Payne, but not writing Max Payne in this world. So that was a nice nod as well too. I've been playing Ring Fit Adventure as well. Still playing that. I had to stop it for a few weeks, unfortunately, because, COVID, but I'm getting right back on it. So this week I've started playing it again, and still I tell people the hardest game I've ever played, because that game makes you move, makes you sweat and everything. And then, like I said, I played a little bit of Brothers in Arms, and has that been it? Yeah, it's been about it. Haven't really played anything else on the Switch. I've been picking up games on the Switch, but I haven't played anything there. So I'm kind of going through the time right now where I will switch, and I don't mean like Nintendo Switch, but I'll kind of just switch back and forth. Like, I'll play on the Switch for a while, then I'll play on my other consoles for a while. Like, I'll just be like, I feel like playing on Xbox and PS5. So that's also kind of why I don't get rid of these systems either when I'm not using them. It's like, yeah, I might not be using it for like a year or maybe even 2 years, but I am going to eventually use it again. So yeah, those are the games that I've been playing here. Had a lot of good times with that. Either way, that is about the end of this episode here. Did go over an hour, getting close to almost an hour, 30 minutes, but we're not going to be going that far. We're still I'll give you guys some, guys and girls, some of your time back here. So I'm trying to think of a good keyword for the end of this. How about the word flash? In case you don't know, I try and use a keyword or a key phrase at the end of these episodes, and if you use that keyword or key phrase in a comment on the YouTube upload, I'll know that you've made it to the end of this episode. So yeah, how about that? If you use the word flash in the comments section, I'll know that you've made it to the end. Anyways, that is about it for this episode of Mario's Minute. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all really liked listening to it. I hope you were entertained by it all. And, share some of your stories maybe. What do you think of Max Payne? Do you love, do you hate it? I don't know. I don't know of anybody who hates Max Payne. Actually. I don't know of anybody who hates Max Payne. It's like, I don't know. You don't hear about people who hate dogs. Like, who hates dogs? Like, you could maybe not have a preference for dogs. They could not be your favorite. But I'm gonna look at you a little differently if I find out that you hate dogs. Anyways, that's about it for this episode. Seriously, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone. And until next month.